What is the truth about diminishing returns in Bitcoin? It's one of those common questions, right? Is the cycle dead? Are we gonna have a super cycle? Is it gonna go down? What's the reality? What's the gist? Is Bitcoin going to have diminishing returns? I would say yes and no. In some ways, it is going to have diminishing returns. In other ways, it is not going to have diminishing returns. And to blindly say it is going to have diminishing returns or to not have diminishing returns, I think is lacking nuance and short-sightedness. So let's go through the three ways at which Bitcoin price could and could not have diminishing returns, and then the three reasons why it doesn't matter. The three ways that price could have diminishing returns. There are three factors that affect Bitcoin price. The first one is nominal price, right? The actual number of political currency units chasing Bitcoin. The second one is about global adoption, right? How many of the world's people are using Bitcoin? How many people in this city here are using Bitcoin? And number three is technological productivity and progress and how prices fall to the marginal cost of production. In terms of US dollars, in terms of political currency units, there is no top to Bitcoin, and it will just keep going up. There are no diminishing returns in terms of fiat dollars, because at some point, inflation will spike up to the level at which Bitcoin in nominal terms will just keep going up and up and up. And while there may be diminishing returns for a time, in nominal terms, in terms of dollars, when there is that inflationary event, whether it's hyperinflation or just very strong inflation, whether that's 5 years from now or 50 years from now, I don't know, I don't care, but I do know at that time, there will be no such thing as diminishing returns. With adoption though, there will be diminishing returns. There are millions of people in this city. You can only double a number so many times until you reach millions of people, right? Right now, let's say 1% of the world uses Bitcoin. Actually, I don't agree with that. Let's be a little more realistic. Let's say 1/3% of the world uses Bitcoin to a heavy degree, right? If we double that, that means we get to the majority of a percent. We double it again, we get to over 1%, then 2.5%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, 80%, and boom, we're already there, right? We've gone from 70 people back in 1992 on the Cypherpunk mailing list. There were 70 people that were quote unquote Bitcoiners before Bitcoin was even a thing. People that understood this. 70 people back in 1992, 33 years ago, about a third of a century ago, there were 70 people. We've gone from 70 people to 700, 7,000, 70,000, 700,000, right? And it's probably going to take another third of a century, if more like half a century, to go from 700,000 to 7 million, 70 million, 700 million, and eventually 7 billion people. So there are diminishing returns. At some point, we will run out of people. The same thing really needs to be emphasized here with MicroStrategy stock. People keep asking about MicroStrategy stock, if they should buy it, if they should hold it forever and all that, but I want to emphasize again, MicroStrategy stock, as a holder of the stock, I love the stock, I love what Michael's doing, I support what Michael's doing, but the reality is that MicroStrategy stock, similar to this, is a zero-sum game. It is going to end. There are diminishing returns to the BTC yield that they can collect. Bitcoin adoption cannot grow at a percentage rate faster than the rate that the global population is growing forever. It inherently cannot. We will run out of new people to be entering the Bitcoin network. In the same way with MicroStrategy stock, Michael can't have an annual Bitcoin SAT per share increase of 30% or 70%, not even 1%, right? Because at some point in the future, that will lower, if not end entirely. Now, that may be a very long ways off, in the same way that it's a very long ways off for global adoption to reach Bitcoin, but that's the second way to view Bitcoin. That is like an S-curve kind of shape. That will have diminishing returns because eventually we'll run out of new people to adopt Bitcoin. There's a third way to price Bitcoin though, and I think that is the most important way. That is with technological progress. I'm sitting here in this high rise here in Medellin, Colombia, and I'm able to travel the world, I'm able to travel to a new place way easier. My ancestors were able to do way easier than people of other generations previous to you and me were able to do, right? I can do things on the internet, I can look up any restaurant within walking distance here, or in fact the whole city, in fact the whole country, in fact the whole world, and learn about its reviews, get its phone number, see its menu, do all that, right? You couldn't do that before the smartphone, right? And so as technology is getting better and making our lives better, the cost of energy is going down. The cost of productivity is going down per unit of human effort that is being put in. Yes, we can complain about how fiat is making our lives worse and how about all these things are awful, but at the end of the day, 1 hour of human labor today in 2025, no matter where you are in the world, is going to net you a result of more energy than that same hour of work 500 years ago, let alone 5,000 years ago. So that's the third way to view Bitcoin price and Bitcoin productivity. And that way is the most bullish way of all. That way is not necessarily diminishing returns. That could accelerate. The rate of technological progress could accelerate in the future. And so you have to combine those three things. And this is why Bitcoin price is so hard to predict. Because first you got to predict how many political currency units are they going to create. Second, you have to predict how many people are going to be adopting Bitcoin really quickly here. And third, you have to predict what new technological innovations are going to be created into the world and plugged in to the Bitcoin network. All three of those things are incredibly complicated things, are extremely difficult to predict, if not impossible, because two of them rely entirely on human emotion, right? Human reason or logic or whatever, right? So, and then when you combine the three together, that's why it's so difficult to price, right? At any given time, the US government or any other government in the world can just print trillions of dollars with no warning, right? At any point in time, we can go from 1/3% of the world adopting Bitcoin to 80% adopting Bitcoin, to 2% adopting Bitcoin, right? Even though those are tiny numbers, barely tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people on the global stage, that is a massive change to the number of adopters using, holding, and buying Bitcoin consistently every single month, week, or day. And then, of course, technology is slowly, then suddenly. We wait for decades for a certain industry to become profitable enough to explode in demand, right? And to explode in its impact in the economy. We can wait for decades for that. But then once it arrives, it can change the world really quick. In the matter of years, or more like decades, if it's a more analog technology, and perhaps even months or years, if it's a form of digital technology, right? Like if it's some piece of software, it can change the world even faster, right? AI is changing the world way faster than brick and mortar buildings are changing the world today. So those are the three ways to view Bitcoin price. And so one of those ways has no diminishing returns, but doesn't really matter, right? Fiat nominal returns doesn't really matter, right? Because it's all just paper numbers, right? Political currency. It's here in Colombia, the Colombian peso, the exchange rate is about 4,500 to 1 for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin price is already 400 million. 400 million Colombian pesos is one Bitcoin here in Colombia. So in terms of nominal terms, there are no diminishing returns. It's going up forever, Laura. But printing paper doesn't create wealth, so that should be the one you care about the least. The one you care about more is the percentage of adoption in the world, right? More people entering Bitcoin. That will have diminishing returns. And the one you should really care about, technological productivity, it's kind of the best of both worlds. There's not necessarily diminishing returns, and it's one that you should actually care about. That's the one you should care about. How is technology making my life, my kids' lives better? Political currency units is not what matters. If you were to price the entire world in Bitcoin today, in terms of today's technology and today's political currency units, that would be $43 million per Bitcoin. Okay, by the time Bitcoin reaches 50% global adoption, maybe we'll increase global political currency units by a factor of 10, and maybe we'll increase global productivity by 50%. If we took $43 million and we increased it by, let's say, 50%, because we're increasing global productivity by 50%, if we increased it by 50%, and we increase the number of political currency units by a factor of 10, we're looking at a $645 million Bitcoin. My point is the nominal price doesn't matter. If you're pricing Bitcoin in terms of dollars, you are giving an implicit mental bias towards the dollars themselves as your unit of account. Bitcoin is the unit of account. Prices are falling to the marginal cost of production. So, are there diminishing returns to Bitcoin? Yes and no. If you're thinking from that first principles perspective, those are three ways to look at it, and keep in mind all three of those combined gives you the fiat denominated nominal price for Bitcoin, which again is maybe not the best way to measure it because prices are falling in terms of Bitcoin. Now let's talk about the three reasons why it doesn't matter. The three reasons why it doesn't matter. It's because of wealth, friendship, and faith. Those are the three reasons why all this doesn't matter. Let's talk about let's talk about wealth first. Let's talk about wealth and time. You know, I have friends that have hundreds of Bitcoin, you know, a couple of them even basically 1,000 coins, over than 1,000 coins. But, you know, obviously people with 10 coins or 100 coins are way more common. I know a lot of people with a very good amount of money, right? Millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. Very often Bitcoin, right? Sometimes in real estate or stocks or other things too, businesses, right? But obviously me being in Bitcoin, most of the people I know that are very high net worth have their money in Bitcoin. And so they're people that you could probably relate to personally. You know, the thing is, there are dramatic diminishing returns to the kind of lifestyle you could buy. And so this whole conversation, everything I've been saying up to this point, all the videos of the people arguing for or against diminishing returns, cycle theory, super cycle, blah, 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 whatever, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how does it impact your life. Maybe Bitcoin has diminishing returns, maybe it doesn't. But in terms of the kind of lifestyle it can buy you, it surely will have diminishing returns. Okay? To go from somebody who's poor to somebody who can eat is a greater change going from somebody who can eat decent food to good food, to really good food, to 5 Michelin star, whatever, food, right? There's diminishing returns to that. There's diminishing returns to the kind of luxury you can buy or you can rent, right? This is a nice apartment I'm in right now. It's a beautiful spot. You know, it's one of the nicest apartments here in Medellin. It's not nearly as expensive as you might think. But the point is, this is the 16th floor of a 17-story building. Like, there's only so much higher you can go. Yes, me as a 25-year-old, I'm doing pretty well for my age group, right? I don't have as much money as some of you would think. I probably have a lot more money than some others of you would think, but in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters to me is what's the kind of lifestyle I'm living, and the reality is that there are diminishing returns. If I was a multi-billionaire right now, yeah, my life would probably be even better. I would probably have way more things hired out. I would probably have more luxuries. I would have more toys. I would be able to go on more vacations, whatever. But the life I'm living right now is way closer to that lifestyle than it is closer to the average person's lifestyle. I have the freedom on a Tuesday morning to be recording this video. I have the freedom on a traditional work day to go out and do fun things in the city. I have the freedom to travel the world and work remotely at the same time. I have the freedom to do all kinds of things that 90% of the world's adults aren't able to do. And this is not me bragging. I'm trying to anchor reality for you. Most people aren't living in the kind of world that you're living in. If you're living in a Western world, if you are a Bitcoin millionaire, or you're a Bitcoin multimillionaire, or even if you aren't a Bitcoin millionaire yet, if you actually look at your life objectively, and you compare it to the lives of other adults, and you compare it to that, you have to realize there are diminishing returns. Look at Michael Saylor's life, okay? I'm sure you like Michael Saylor. You know, he's the billionaire, he's the big Bitcoin baller, whatever, right? You know, we all love him, right? What can Michael do? Michael can fly basically anywhere in the world, you know, meet all kinds of people in the world, eat whatever he wants, go wherever he wants, do whatever he wants. Okay, what can you do? Probably you can travel most places in the world. Right now, if you really wanted to, you could probably afford a plane ticket to somewhere else in the world. You probably could afford most food that you would like. Maybe it's not the best quality in the world, but maybe it's pretty good, right? Most people in the world can't afford a plane ticket, right? The majority of the world's adults make less than $30 a day. The majority of the world's adults have a very small selection of the things they can actually afford to eat. A majority of the world's adults have a very small opportunity to go out and do things during the week, right? People here in Colombia work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, right? The freedom to just go out and do something, anything. It doesn't matter if it's a $10,000 experience like Michael Saylor, or if it's a $50 experience like maybe you're able to do, or a $500 experience, or a $5 experience. The point is you're able to do it. Yes, the person with 10 times more money than you maybe can do things 10 times more expensive than you, but there are dramatic diminishing returns to the kinds of lifestyle that you can buy with a greater amount of wealth. The same thing is true with healthcare. The same thing is true with everything else, right? And so even if Bitcoin does break to the upside and does not have diminishing returns in terms of what kinds of productivity it can buy you, it doesn't necessarily matter, because the impact that has on you personally may indeed have dramatic diminishing returns. The second part that definitely does have diminishing returns, but in a good way, is that of friendships. The more money you make doesn't necessarily mean the better friendships you make. to better friendships, to better networking. Obviously you probably get way better business connections, but in terms of genuine friendships, of people you can get along with, there are dramatic diminishing returns in the amount of wealth you have. And that's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. That it doesn't matter if you make $1,000 a month or $1 billion a month, like you probably have a small core group of friends. Or I hope you do, I pray you do, right? Because that's a wonderful, precious thing. And getting 10 times the wealth doesn't necessarily mean you get 10 times the friends. Maybe you get 10 times the people trying to come after you, or trying to take your money, or trying to be your friend in order for you to spend your money on them, right? But in terms of actual friendships, there are dramatic diminishing returns to that. And so again, just because Bitcoin goes up dramatically in purchasing power doesn't necessarily mean that your friendships get 10 times better. Maybe you get twice as better because that money has been able to buy you a higher luxury of living where you have more time, right? I'm here, I'll be fully transparent here. I'm here in Colombia right now. I've been hanging out with people, right? Fellow Bitcoin friends. I've been able to spend a whole week with some of my Bitcoin friends here. And yes, so I will say that, yes, sure, that money has given me and them the opportunity to spend more time together, do more fun activities, and deepen our friendships and our connections. But guess what? We could have still become friends digitally. We could have still become friends doing things that were way less expensive experiences. We could have still become friends without the money. All the money did was provide opportunities for the friendship to grow from where it already was. The money itself is not the thing that created the friendship. And so not only is your life and your wealth in terms of stuff potentially going to have diminishing returns, but the kinds of friendships you build potentially have diminishing returns the more money you make. And there's something unique with that in Bitcoin, because in Bitcoin, something that happens is that people get very lonely and isolated as Bitcoin price goes up. And this is one of the reasons why I would strongly encourage you to take self-custody and to learn all things self-custody and go to conferences as soon as possible. Because in 5 years, in 10 years, you're going to have way more Bitcoin than the average person going to these conferences, right? Like imagine if you were somebody from 2011 going to a Bitcoin conference in 2025. You're going to have lived through things with an amount of money that most people there cannot relate to, and they're not going to be able to help you. And yes, you could still be friends with them, but there's going to be those components of you that, frankly, you're probably going to be hesitant to share. If you have 1,000 Bitcoin, you probably don't want to share that with just anybody you meet, right? If you have gone through certain experiences that would be hallmarks of somebody with many, many, many Bitcoin, you probably don't necessarily want to bring that up, right? And so even if you never directly tell them, which you definitely shouldn't, you can indirectly, let people things know they probably shouldn't know. So my point is, in Bitcoin, there's a especially unique factor of this diminishing returns, is that as the Bitcoin price skyrockets by orders of magnitude, there's this additional fear people have. A lot of the people that are coming to this Bitcoin conference here, in Medellin where I am, a lot of them came, multiple of them came because they know they don't necessarily want to come back later. They wanted to be here for the first annual event where all the other people in Bitcoin had gone through the same events they had gone through, lived through the same challenges, opportunities, and obstacles they had gone through, and they could actually relate and build friendships based upon that. And while we all know and want more people to come into Bitcoin in the future, they wanted to build the friendships now, because the friendships being built now are the ones that are going to last in the coming years and decades, right? The friendships being built in that future may not last as long just because there hasn't been as much in common, and frankly, they may not want to do that, right? So that's just something else to think about. And here's the third reason why Bitcoin price diminishing or non-diminishing returns doesn't really matter. I've given you 3 reasons of factors within Bitcoin price: nominal returns, adoption percentage, and technological progress, price following the marginal cost of production. I've given you 2 reasons so far why that whole debate doesn't even matter. That your wealth has diminishing returns, that your friendships likely have diminishing returns, and that's a good thing. You can make friends even if you're dirt poor. The third reason why it doesn't matter is because of your faith, is because of what you believe. Do you believe that you are the moral authority that is deserving, that has earned, or that is just inherently good enough or righteous enough to declare to the world what is right and wrong? I am my own God. I can declare my own morality. I can say if I am a good person or not, or if they are a good person or not, right? I am the one whose authority for my life rests on. Or do you humble yourself and recognize that I am not worthy, I am not good, that I do evil things, I desire evil things, I crave evil things, that while I may do good works here and there, they still stem from a heart that does not desire those things ultimately for their pure reasons. I am somebody who has eaten from the proverbial tree, who has tasted the knowledge of good and evil, and that is in need of somebody, a perfect somebody, who was good, who doesn't have those evil temptations, who is infinitely better than me, with an infinite proof of work nailed up on a cross, who is going to cover me. That is the fundamental question. It's not just what kind of lifestyle you're going to live externally. It's not just what kind of friendships are you going to build interpersonally. It's also about what's the foundation for my worldview. Am I going to go the route of pride and say, maybe Jesus was a good teacher. Maybe God could help me. But ultimately, I'm the guy in charge. I'm the boss. Look at me. Look at how awesome my life is. Look at how much money I have. Look at how many friends I have. Look at how much Bitcoin I have. Look at how much political currency I have, right? I'm a good guy. I donate. I do cool things. I'm nice, right? It's not good enough. Average doesn't cut it. And when the standard is a literal perfection, any imperfection you have does fall short. Bitcoin and fiat cannot interact with each other because Bitcoin is a perfectly sound monetary system, perfectly separated from humans as controlling the network. And fiat money can never become good money because it's bad money, right? In the same way that something that is dead cannot become alive, in the same way that something as fiat cannot become sound, a person whose heart is corrupt and self-seeking and unrighteous cannot become righteous without somebody externally bringing them to that position, without a savior to say, you're broken, you're fallen, you have your whole life based upon this lie, this sneaky, devilish lie that I can be my own God, and that all these other people are good teachers, but I'll filter through what's needed and what's not, what applies to me and what's not, and I'm going to be the guy in charge. That is the most deceiving lie in the entirety of humanity, even worse than the lie of fiat. The lie of fiat is a derivative of that ultimate lie. The lie of fiat is saying, I can be the world's monetary God. I can declare when there is let there be light, when we can print energy out of nothing. And so the problem with the world is not fiat. The problem with the world is sin. Fiat is a cancer, is a kind of cancer as a result of that problem, as a result of that human corruption. It is a symptom of the problem. It is not the problem itself. And so that is the third reason why the price of Bitcoin doesn't matter, because that does not have diminishing returns. The returns of faith, the returns of humbling yourself, the returns of submitting yourself to the one who is perfect, who is not corrupt, who has never had a deceptive or deceitful thought, who is the one with an infinite proof of work sacrificed for you, that does not have diminishing returns. And that is way more important than the friends you make, the nominal returns you see, right? The number of Bitcoins you get, which place you live in the world, right? That's the most important thing. And so when someone asks me, Luke, are there diminishing returns to Bitcoin? These are the things that run through my head. It's a much more complicated answer than yes or no. So to summarize this video, yes, there are diminishing returns to Bitcoin in terms of the number of adopters. No, there were not diminishing returns in Bitcoin when it comes to the number of political currency units. And no, there are not diminishing returns when it comes to Bitcoin pricing in the technological progress of the future, because prices fall to the marginal cost of production, and Bitcoin is absorbing that future productivity indefinitely forever as long as humanity continues to build into the future. However, that combined into one Bitcoin fiat price doesn't matter because, number one, the kind of lifestyle that Bitcoin's going to buy you, diminishing returns or not, that kind of lifestyle is going to have diminishing returns. If you're watching this video, you probably already have more in common with Michael Saylor and the billionaires than the average person in the world. And you can get ever closer to him. You can have an ever bigger yacht, an ever bigger plane, an ever bigger car, an ever bigger house, right? An ever bigger Bitcoin stack. But in terms of actual lifestyle, you're probably closer to a billionaire than the average person. And the third reason why it doesn't matter is because in the end, the only thing that does matter is whose moral authority are you standing on? Are you standing on your own moral authority, one that is subjective to you, one that you have decided over the course of your whole life, right? Is that the moral authority you're going to be standing on? Or are you going to humble yourself and recognize, I am not worthy to be the world's monetary god, and therefore I am not worthy to control the algorithm of the world's money. And likewise, in the same way, I'm going to humble myself and enter into Bitcoin and not be a monetary god. I'm also going to accept I'm not going to be a moral god, because I would not be a righteous God. I would be an evil God, one that would destroy my life, the lives of the peoples around me, and if I control the world, I would destroy the world as well. That is the most important question of all. Do you humble yourself and accept a Savior, Jesus, who paid the infinite proof of work, or are you going to keep pretending like you're going to be the one that's going to do that? These are the things to think about when it comes to Bitcoin. These are the messages I hope to come across. It's easy to give a yes or no answer to the diminishing returns argument, to put up a chart on the screen with profit and loss things and showing some sort of trading link and making predictions on price. That's easy to do. It's much more difficult to give these kinds of nuance, to think about these kinds of nuance all day, every day, and have these conversations with people all day, every day, because it's what I care about and it's what you need to hear. And so hopefully this has been useful to you. If it's been useful to you, like, subscribe, do all that wonderful stuff. You're going to see a lot more videos coming from me, as you always do, but the message is going to be the same. The message has been this consistent message for years, and it's probably going to be this consistent message in the future, because all these things, I believe, are not just true over the last few years, but true today, and they're going to be true in the future. So thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful to you. I'll see you in the next video.